So, thanks everyone for joining us. I'm hosting the meeting, also running kind of the behind the scenes stuff. So I apologize in advance if I'm a little bit distracted. Trying to keep an eye on letting folks in that are joining us, but also keeping things moving along. So again, thanks for being here this evening. My name is Katie Marshall. I'm the director at MacRostie Art Center, and we are very happy to be hosting this talk this evening. And I am super excited to be joined by Emily Baxter of We Are All Criminals and Louise Waakaa'igan, one of the poets featured in the Scene Project, which is on display at MacRostie Art Center this month. So we will get to meet them in just a bit. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thanks to some of the folks that have helped to make this evening and the exhibit coming up to Grand Rapids possible. So big thanks to the City of Grand Rapids Human Rights Commission for their support, and for Kootasca Community Action and Circles of Support for supporting this as well. And thanks to Cyrus White and SCG Nonprofits for sponsoring the exhibit this month. Just a little bit of some notes about how the evening's going to go. We're going to start off hearing from Emily Baxter about the organization We Are All Criminals and the project Scene. Then Emily will introduce Louise to share some of her poetry, and we'll hear a little bit more about Louise's story and journey as a writer. And then we will probably have some time at the end for questions, but if folks want to type questions into the chat as we go along, if you don't want to lose your thought, feel free to do that. We will probably keep everyone on mute during the sort of the presentation part of the evening, but at the end, feel free to unmute yourself, turn on your video, and we can definitely you know, have a conversation with folks that are here. So let's see. I think that about covers my housekeeping for the evening. And yes, so without further ado, I think I will hand things over to Emily to get us started, because I know we have a lot to get through. So again, thanks to everyone for being here, and welcome to Emily.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks to everyone for joining us this evening and for making this all possible. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about the project that I've been working on for the past several years called We Are All Criminals, and a project within the project that I've been working on for the past year called Scene, and then introduce a dear friend and Scene collaborator, Louise, to share some of her exquisite poetry with us. And then for a Q&A. So without any further ado, I will now attempt to share screen. And oh, nope, you've disabled the, give me the power, Katie. You'll have to surrender the wheel.
Yep, there we go. Okay.
Disabled. Oh, good Lord.
I thought I checked all of my settings, but I missed that one. So.
All right, let's try this one. Here we go. Can you all see it? Excellent. So like I said, I started a project called We Are All Criminals about 8 or 9 years ago now, asking people who otherwise have had no interaction with the criminal legal system about crimes that they've committed for which they have not been caught. And so these are doctors, lawyers, professors, politicians, students, and together we look at how state statute, federal code, and broader social stigma would have prevented them from living the lives they now enjoy had they been confined and defined by their criminal past. So it's a way of looking at criminal activity through a statutory lens, but also importantly, through a racial disparity lens. The majority of the folks that I've interviewed are white, are middle class or upper middle class, and it's another way of looking at how our criminal legal system disparately impacts people of color, Black people, and Indigenous people across the US. This is a much needed conversation, right? Looking at just our prison population, we incarcerate nearly 1.5 million people in state and federal prisons. 1.5 million people. It is unprecedented in our own history, it's unparalleled in the world, and it's unconscionable. And this doesn't even begin to look at all of the other populations that are kept locked up or locked out. So people in prisons, the millions of people in prisons aren't here on this graph. People on probation and parole, people held in Indian country jails, people on mental health and chemical dependency holds, immigration detention, kids in juvenile detention, people who are suffering under the weight of a criminal record. All of those millions of people are not shown in this tsunami of humanity that you see on your screen right now. So the problem is even much greater than this. According to the National Employment Law Project, 1 in 4 people in the United States has a criminal record. The Bureau of Justice Statistics says that it's actually closer to 1 in 3, and those waters just keep rising. Like I said, there are undeniable racial disparities that exist in our criminal legal system. The lifetime likelihood of imprisonment for Black males born in 2003, according to the Sentencing Project, is 1 in 3. For white women, it's 1 in 111, right? And you know that we white women are committing crimes, but we're not who you see proportionately speaking in our criminal legal system. And those disparities start early. Kids as young as 5, Black and Native youth are criminalized and suspended and kicked out of school for engaging in the same behavior as white children. And these records end up affecting people throughout their lives when it comes to employment, housing, professional licensure, access to public benefits, education, immigration, the ability to travel, very importantly, the ability to cast a ballot, right? We're seeing the effects of that now. If you have a criminal record, access to these various avenues of life can be foreclosed. But that's based on a criminal record and not on a criminal past, right? So it's not crimes that you've committed, but rather the statutory and stigma that attaches to a record and not the action itself. So I've collected more than 400 of these interviews of people who've gotten away with crimes and placed the first 100 or so on our website at weareallcriminals.org. Should you go on there, and I would encourage you to do so, go down mid-page, click on the Luxury to Forget tab, and up will pop a gallery of folks who have committed crimes for which they were never caught. Click once on any participant pick and you see how they're introduced in the world. Again, like I said, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a professor, as a business owner, as a pastor. But what follows is how they would be known had they been caught. So theft of controlled substances, DWI, burglary, assault. Click twice and you go into the story itself. Now, some of these are quite serious, like this aggravated robbery from a student. He said, "I just wish I'd made a different decision." Others are more innocuous, like this woman who shoplifted bangles and LPs to deal with the loss of her mother. That's context that she has now, decades later. She's able to understand why she was shoplifting. She understood the relationship between the loss of her mother dying, and her acting out. But she didn't have the wherewithal. She didn't have the language or the self-awareness at the time. And I'm a former public defender. I worked in Grand Rapids, and I can tell you time and again, seeing that, especially with kids, that acting out or the need to be seen or the need to be a part of something. I've interviewed people who engaged in criminal activity to cope with various losses, like this gentleman who dealt drugs to deal with a chaotic home life. He went on to become a mayor. This woman who broke into her neighbors' homes as a youth to rifle through their junk drawers and eat their ice cream and occasionally swipe some silver, she's now a chief financial officer. I've interviewed law enforcement officers who reflect upon the weight, the mistakes that they've made, from attorneys who recognize that even if they had been caught, because of their place in life, right? Because of their race, because of their class, like this gentleman said that he lived in an affluent neighborhood, he would have been able to get through the system unscathed. He said, in fact, that his brothers had done so. I've interviewed people who reflect upon crimes that they've committed, but say that the ability to recognize the wrongs that they've done will make them better people in the future, right? So this person is a new mom. She's also a med student, soon to be a doctor. And she says that that's going to make her a better doctor. That ability to be vulnerable with herself and recognize crimes that she's committed. I've interviewed social workers who have tipped over porta potties with people inside, and pediatricians who have blown porta potties up. Porta potties and mailboxes are a common target. I've interviewed students who have streaked across the football field, and businessmen who could have been known by their mugshots rather than their merit if their battles with addiction had been criminalized. And I hear time and again that, you know what, this was a learning experience. I figured it out. I don't regret anything that I've done. It's who I am. And some that recognize the hypocrisy in that, especially people I've interviewed who also have engaged in hiring decisions, for example, people who are privy to the decision-making room when it's decided who would make a good fit, who fits the culture, who's trustworthy. And time and again, people with criminal records, especially if that person is a person of color or an Indigenous person with a criminal record, they are determined to be unworthy of redemption, unworthy of employment. Some people do carry a lot of guilt, people that I've interviewed, and just don't have a restorative avenue to talk about it because our criminal legal system is very adversarial. They felt like they could never come forward and apologize for what they had done. But by and large, this is what I've heard, that I was able to learn my lesson without learning it the hard way. And people recognizing that going through that, committing crimes, especially in youth, and not having those doors foreclosed to you moving forward in life allows you to move forward. Whereas for folks who are labeled early on and who can't get into school, who can't get a job, who can't get an apartment, that the snowballing effect that those criminal records have. I should also mention, of course, that there are people who engage in criminal activity because that is a way of survival, right? It's not just youthful mistakes that I'm talking about, but also people who are dealt hands in life that are far different from my own. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I had a very comfortable life. I was never, for example, given the choice of joining a gang or being harmed. And there are certainly a lot of people that I have worked with who that was something that they were confronted with. None of this is, of course, to suggest that we should somehow forget that harm is done, that there is violence, there's harm, that people are hurt, people are killed. But it is an opportunity for us to think about what happens. What is our role in society? How can we prevent violence from occurring? How can we prevent harm from occurring? What's the systemic root of these problems, and address those rather than attempting to disappear our problems by disappearing people in prisons. And I think that means investing in people, investing in communities, rather than this continued reliance on a twisted system that just perpetuates harm. And this is all of us, right? We've all made mistakes. We've all committed crimes. Hopefully fewer as we grow older, but the worse or less valued or more difficult hand you're dealt in life, the less your margin of error. And We Are All Criminals is about that shrinking margin of error. It's about the human cost of never allowing people to come up for air. But it's most definitely also a commentary on the disparate impact of our nation's policies, policing, and prosecution. Many of the participants, not all, but many of them have belonged to a race and class that is not overrepresented in the criminal legal system. And some of the people have been pretty straight up about that. Again, you can find these stories online at weareallcriminals.org. Katie was kind enough to have one of the first exhibits of this work up at the MacRostie. Katie, was that like 6 years ago now? 4 or 5? What is time anymore? I feel like the time continuum has just collapsed. So it happened sometime in the last decade, we'll say. And so I would encourage people to kind of dig into some of these stories. You know, and for many, in particular, Black and Brown and Indigenous people across the US, mere existence is seen as always already criminal, right? It's not just about those who have lost their lives, but it's not just about law enforcement. This is far more pervasive than that, this concept of criminality. And, you know, our criminal legal system is a reflection of society's values. It's a reflection of who we fear, what we value. So while we're talking about the stories of people who have gotten away with crimes, I think it's very important to remember the people serving time right now, especially people who are serving time right now in the midst of this pandemic. If the criminal justice system was designed by people who believe they might one day be involved, he said, then we would have justice. I would add that if the criminal legal system were designed by people who have been involved, then we would have justice. So I'll ask all of you on the call now to really think about this, to sit with this. What's your story? What would your chalkboard say? And what crimes have you committed for that you were never caught for? And what would life be like if you had been defined by that, defined by those mistakes? What if a Google search on you didn't find your carefully curated social media page, but instead found your mugshot? What would life be like for you if you had to check that box at every opportunity in life? It's hard to work through this. It's a daily exercise to really confront the privilege that so many of us on the call, so many of us in the US have, and myself most definitely included. But it's important. And this particular exercise, I think, has true value. This idea of thinking about the crimes you've committed for which you haven't been caught and where you would be in life had you been limited by those. There's a professor in Georgia, Denise Woodall is her name, and she has her students doing this very exercise. So asking them first how people in the criminal legal system should be treated, and oftentimes getting really punitive responses back from them, and then asking them to think about what life would be like had they been labeled by their actions, by their mistakes, by the things that they should not have done, had they been confined and defined by those. And then she circles back and asks those questions, the empathy-seeking questions once more, and finds that more often than not, people change their answers to something far more merciful. And really, that's what We Are All Criminals is about. It's about closing the empathy and the opportunity chasm. So I have 3 asks of you tonight. God, my fingers are all twisted. Never really noticed how gnarled my fingers are until you can see them on the screen. That's okay. We'll just do a 1, 2, 3. That's a little bit better. I have 3 things to ask of you right now. Number 1, stay horrified. Everyone should be horrified at the realities of our criminal legal system. Like I said, especially right now in the midst of this pandemic, when you have people who are literally trapped in these hotbeds of the virus, people who cannot social distance, people who cannot access soap or where Purell is contraband, places where people can't open windows to get fresh air, where they are stuck like sitting ducks awaiting the virus to come. And we're seeing that at Stillwater right now, for example, where over half of the men incarcerated at Stillwater have tested positive. Stay horrified. Number 2, stay hopeful. We need you in this fight. We need you to take this personally. We need you to use your voice, to use your vote. We need you to be involved. There's a groundswell of change happening across the US, and you are a necessary part of that. And then number 3, see people. Just see their humanity. Mass incarceration, mass criminalization is dependent upon the ignoring and the erasure of the human beings we cage. And you can stop that. You can see them.
I am someone who looks for second chances every day, looking for affirmation and looking for confirmation that it's okay to be here in the world. 18 years old, and I'm, made the biggest mistake of my life, and it'll be with me forever. It's important for me to be here so that I can try to make a difference, so that this doesn't become my only story. I'm more than just a felony. In every way, it's hindering me in housing. I'm looking for employment. My daughter, who has an opportunity to, have scholarships to go to schools, I'm afraid to apply for those because I don't want to, have that somehow impact her. I'm stuck. I'm held hostage because it's impacting every single day of my life, every hour, every minute. I just want to be seen and heard. Majority of my life, it's always been my voice what didn't matter. To know my heart is to know me. I have a heart of gold. I just want to be who I am. I want to be given permission to be who I am.
That's Leah. She's amazing. She has a heart of gold, and she provided the perfect segue to the SEEN project. So SEEN is a collaboration with the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop and the thoughtful, intelligent, humble, and deeply gifted writers inside of Minnesota state prisons. And it's an opportunity, it's a challenge to disrupt mass incarceration by clearing the pathways for people behind bars to have their voices heard, their faces seen, and their humanity recognized. This is Vaughn. Vaughn says, I came through these doors as a child, literally. It's been 24 years since that child came through those doors, and I promise you, who I've grown to become is the man my mother dreamed I would be. Vaughn tested positive for COVID 3 weeks ago, and he said that he's just now, the cough is beginning to subside. This is Sarith. When Sarith was 13, he was living in Cambodia, and the Khmer Rouge came. He was separated from his family. He was forced into a labor camp where he was starved, he was beaten, he was tortured, he was forced to dig his own grave after digging the graves of his loved ones. And he was told that if he didn't continue to show this undying support for the powers that be, he would be killed and pushed into that grave. This is what he said to me in March. Sarith and I talk every night that we're able, and there's a reason for that. It's because of this. He said, when the Khmer Rouge came, I was 13 and at school. My family fled their home but couldn't find me. I was lost. But even in this moment, my dad risked his life to return home to unlatch the gate that kept our hogs penned in. He knew the pigs would die if they were locked in the cage, and he wasn't there to feed them, to care for them. And I wonder, with COVID coming into the prisons like the Khmer Rouge, Will we be forgotten in our pens? Who will remember the prisoners in a time like this? This is B. His eyes and my eyes are barcodes. I mean barred holes. I mean bar over hot coals stoked by badged mouths that form person but say property. 3 times daily we stand and are inventoried. See our bodies bend into numbers accounted for. This is Ms. B. I would highly encourage you to go to her page. Every artist has a page on the weareallcriminals.org site, and hers is weareallcriminals.org/Ms. B. She tells this fantastic story of her mother's magical feet, and that is all I will say about it. You must go on the page to hear her read it. And this, I think, is Jeff.
Footprints lost, toiling at sunset. Sun descends beneath earth's lip, inhales peach, plum, raspberry haze. Moon's gravity devours time. Our fingertips dive, sift wet Nantucket, clutch crescent clams. Seagulls float below cotton candy plumes, dissolve into sky fire. Their songs recede. Ocean's edge tumbles towards us, froths, hungers for our trailing souls. Dark depressions in the sodden beach, mute echoes convey a human ache. We were here. Thinking we made truth in sands of time, the ocean unfurls, we are erased.
I share Jeff in part because I love that poem, and I think it's important now, especially now where he's saying, we were here, we were erased, but also because the people we're talking about, the artists, don't exist in a vacuum. And Jeff's mom is on this call, right? There are people who love the people inside, who are with us now, who are sharing this space with us, but who are also our neighbors, who are our colleagues, our coworkers, the person that, the clerk at the grocery store, the person passing on the street, and they are ourselves. This is Mo. She says, serving life never flashes before your eyes. This is Fong. This is an excerpt from Drop a Kite by Fong at 31 to Fong at 13. Listen, you owe no one but your mother and father your life. They have abandoned their thatched hut just to give you a future. Do not let their wisdom sit as wax in your ears. Do not get run over on this adolescent road. People can be stingy with helping hands. Let your mung bones age with a person you love. And this is Bino.
Fire in the hole. Mirror gazing, reflective scab of a man. Cliff diving, Tweety bird burying, 2-bit rascal. Pack mentality, tree climbing, scoundrel in a brothel. King of the mountain, founder of the youth search, and parable of a person. Who are you to be critical of our mental hospital when we created it? Come on, reach into this hole. Save me from your G.I. Joe's hostile takeover of Barbie and Ken's dollhouse, from being a snake oil peddling door salesman with nothing to offer, 4 jokers in a deck of cards, conniving con man, from that strychnine snorting, whip cracking, world crushing, hush money pushing, prostitute wrangling, nightmare monster, creeping orange face. Save me, back flipping domestic terrorist, soon to be dinosaur in the Apple store, you high speed driving bad babysitter with a fifth of liquor, risk taking conservative anomaly of a role model, 2-gun toting deep thinker. Reach into this hole and try and pull me out. Save me from flesh cracking miniature warheads, from the savory taste of illegal success in the phrase, he's better off dead, from the rain-filled days, racism maze, from the downswing of a cynic's verbal sickle and being euthanized with euphemisms. Save me like you save fine memories, you mirror gazing casino, vanity indulged, mohawk wearing duplicitous thing. Unlearn my skewed facts and what I think a breaking point is. Uncapture my mind from the fake sound of freedom ringing. Unravel my thread from the line of our misguided free will. Save me, death-defying couch potato, flapping fish in a frying pan, you ice cube in Arizona heat with the hope of a burning phoenix. Evaporate into nothing. Heartbeat of a tortoise, pace of a sloth. You're not ready. to save me from the fate of an empty funeral and a dry eulogy. You unreligious man of the cloth, street priest with a faulty flock, Bible reading heathen, calorie counting glutton, and sin committing hog in a trough, street heretic, reach into this hole and try and pull me out from being a love paraplegic, from being emotionally crippled, from being a bastard child of distorted lust, from biological clicks ticking in reverse and Hallmark card confessions. Save me. Want to be Casanova, want to be outlaw, want to be musician. You reflect the miscreant in a mirror, gremlin with a grenade, living in harmonious madness like Tupac and Sebastian Bach riding in a Maybach. Save me from a dream deferred in the hues of discrimination and the labels of the nation of incarceration. I'm not your inmate, I'm not your offender, I'm not your client, I'm not your patient, I'm not your reflection, I am your reflection. Now reach into this hole, come on, save me from dilapidated houses, crumbled relationships, smiles filled with potholes, darker streets of disappearing adolescence, from ignorance is bliss, and the voice in my head from my ego's power trip. Save me, I dare you, reach down into this hole and try and pull me out.
Yeah, that's Bino. That line, I am not your reflection, I am your reflection. I hope that people are able to reflect on that as we go throughout the night. I shared these stories, these voices, these portraits with you in the hope that you can see them, that you can truly see the people that we are caging in Minnesota. And see them as people, right? As fathers, as sisters, as scholars, as poets, as change makers, as leaders, as people. We are blessed today to have one such change maker, one such poet, one such lovely human being with us here today. This is Louise. Louise Waakaa'igan is enrolled at the Kootasca Reservation in northern Wisconsin. She is the recipient of the 2017 Penn Poetry Prize and just recently published her first collection of poetry called This Is Where. And once I stop screen sharing, I'm going to add in the chat a link to buy the book, unless Katie, you're already on that. Oh, she is. And it's a collection. It's her first collection of poetry. It is amazing. I'd recommend that everyone purchase it. Louise and I first met when she was a resident at Shakopee. This was about a year ago now. Is that right? Again, what is time? I'm not sure. But I was lucky enough to meet her on the inside and hear some of her poetry then. And then this photo was maybe taken just a few months after she came home a few weeks after she came home in the St. Paul Conservatory, which is like the perfect place to be after being in prison, I think, just to be surrounded. It was January, to be surrounded by the lushness that is the St. Paul Conservatory. And so now I'm going to ask Louise to unmute her lovely voice and share with us. I would like to put in a recommendation for This Is Where, which is my favorite poem by you.
Well, thank you. That was so lovely, and hello to everyone for being here. These Zoom meetings are definitely becoming part of everyday life, which is still mind-boggling. But thank you, Emily, for just sharing your work and your passion with We Are All Criminals and the STEAM Project. It's just necessary, and it's important, beautiful, and you are an epic human being, and any collaboration with you, I am down. So I will read, and then I think we might have some questions. So this is the title poem for the collection. Here it is. So pretty. This is where. I'm from Beneshi's bloodline. That's Bill Baker, if you don't speak Ojibwe-Moan. Nivagizi Dodem. I'm from 6 Mile, 49ing up the driveway, sitting on green boxes, watching cars. Sometimes their doors didn't match. I'm from Packer games on Sundays, Greyhound trips for Christmas, and Easter baskets with Carla. I'm from women with the same last name and a father none of us knew. I'm from the woods, northern, where pines and birch bark blanket both bends of travel roads, paved and gravel. I'm from a single parent household, Michael Jackson cassette tapes, Purple Rain posters, and latchkey kids. Title V programs, commodes on pantry shelves, cucumbers from Grandpa Jake's garden, and a mean old dog named Turkey. I'm from crying won't change anything, and you should have known better. I'm from punitive silence and where it's normal. Hugs are warm and forced Catholicism still weighs heavy on me mama's shoulders. Thank you. It's Emily's favorite.
Louise, I'm going to ask you a few questions now.
Okay.
And if you have other pieces you would like to read, I think that would be brilliant. And then I would love to open it up to other questions too that people on the call may have.
Okay.
This one, we dig right in. Jen wrote these. So Jen Bowen, who is the founder of the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop and who is a brilliant writer herself and who gets right to the heart of things. So here she is, getting right to the heart. Louise, what is it like to write about absence?
Oh, wow. And Jennifer's not even showing her face. It's haunting. Necessary for my healing. A lot of my poetry has been about the absence of my father. And not only that, but just my reconciliation with that truth about my life and the fact that I can move forward despite that absence. It's a tough unfolding process, and yet it's necessary, but it's achful. You know, I think anyone who knows what it feels like to miss somebody, it hurts. And sometimes I'm not the greatest at conversation, and that's why I write. I don't know how to process it verbally, so I just write it down, and I'm just so grateful that somebody wants to listen to that. Good question, Jen.
Can you talk a bit about that balance between your own emotional exploration and healing and crafting, right? And creating?
I think as a creator or a creative person, or just when you make something, you think it's great, you know, and you kind of overlook the flaws or the imperfections of it, or if you know, whatever it is. And that's the exact process with writing. You really have to kind of remove your rosy-eyed glasses and just look at the bones of it and allow someone else to look at those bones, as messy and dry as they may be, and really get to the best version that can be. And it's a lot of editing, it's a lot of revision, it's a lot of vulnerability. It's difficult because you think, I remember like early on writing poetry, just being so proud of a poem and then handing it to someone that I admire, like, will you edit this? You probably won't really need to, it's gonna be spectacular. And hearing, oh, it's a really good start, you know, and really that isn't, you know, to kind of bash you at all. It's really to bring out the meat. And I think sometimes we tend to fluff stuff up, make it really pretty. We use filters on our Snapchat. when really people just want to see our realest version. And sometimes that can be very, very difficult, but very true to the process. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that it reminds me of something that B, the poet that we heard a little bit from earlier, he says that poetry doesn't allow you to lie. He says it in a more
Right.
poetic way, but yes, essentially that you can't lie when you're right. If you're truly writing and if you're truly engaging in the revision process with someone that you admire and somebody that is invested in your work, you can't lie through that. The truth comes out. As
Right.
ugly, as unwieldy, and as necessary and beautiful as it is, the truth comes out.
And more oftentimes than not, it ends up being so much more beautiful than any polished kind of superficial version that you would try to put out there. And I would bet to say that it wouldn't connect as deeply as just being forthcoming.
Mm.
Oh.
Can you say a few words about authority? So, for example, giving yourself permission to be the voice for your own concerns.
You know, is this your question or is this Jen's? I just have to know.
This is Jen's.
It would be. So of course, just coming from where I had spent many years of my life, authority kind of gets this like, I just want to scrunch up my face and like, puff up a little bit. And yet, that's not really a healthy position to hold, right? Because I'm the one that's frustrated and I'm the one that's holding and I'm the one that's blocking. And at the same time, I have my own authority to exhale that, to choose to move forward as I am in my own apartment. I'm no longer in a 5x9 cell. And so authority is about surrender in both aspects of how I defined it. While I was in confinement and now while I'm out here, I get to stand on my own 2 feet, just as I got to stand on my own 2 feet while incarcerated. And even though there was authority over a lot of the decisions and a lot of the boundaries that I could express, I still had my own authority. And that can be very frightening and very intimidating when you're under the guise of somebody else, social norms, restrictions, limitations, not having that privilege. Coming into that own balance is tough. I don't think I can adequately describe that.
Can you
Maybe
talk
about it later.
Can you talk a little bit about the writing community at Shakopee and maybe the kind of role of resistance that the writing community plays?
I often say this, that I was fortunate enough to be in a facility that thrived on programming, that really nurtured volunteer interaction pre-COVID. I really want to say that now because there is no human interaction whatsoever. And that has to be stated. So before all of this, the volunteers that came in, whether it was for writing or religious or physical, whatever it was, there was such a community and such a welcoming desire to have that community from the women inside. When I first was incarcerated, about a year into my incarceration, there was this writer's workshop from 2 local women in the cities. They came in faithfully every week for about 10 years. And that community, and the women changed, every quarter, every year, every season. Some came back, some, only tried it once, but that is really where my sense of community in a writing sense was really nurtured. And then after they had exited MPWW, and Jennifer showed up. And really what it is, it's, I mean, community is a great word, and yet it's also a collaboration of writers who challenge each other, who listen to each other, who support each other, and really bring out the best in each other solely due to the love of craft and the love of supporting that, and the love of making sure that the word never dies in that sense. Yeah. And it's such a healthy expression. A lot of the people incarcerated battle addictions, and so they're forced into this sobriety, and some choose that each day, and you know, addiction is a battle. And yet, so with writing, many women, and maybe some of the men as well, found an outlet for them to maintain their authority and sobriety in that sense, and found a much healthier and more productive way of expressing themselves, and sitting with some of those goals from their past, or just some of the absences that they felt as well.
I've placed in the chat the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop URL for people to check out. They really are just an extraordinary organization that operates on a shoestring budget, and they're doing their annual fundraiser now. So if you have any spare dollars to send their way, just know that it is money very well spent. I've got one more question for you, Louise, before I turn the mic over to other folks on the call for questions. I see Tony's on. She may have one for you. Tell us about your next writing project.
My next writing project, well, it's the second collection of poetry. It's more, if you're familiar with any of my writing, it's kind of the same note, just a lot of reflection. I'm in a different chapter, we'll say, in my life. And so there's a lot, especially just for 2020, there's a lot of stuff to reflect on, right? Just to try to like set aside and process. So I'm really excited. The writing practice has changed a little bit. I don't get to have like a weekly committed group, you know, where we sit down and we just kind of go at it. So it takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of intention. But I'm excited for collection number 2. Yeah, fingers crossed.
For folks on the call, Louise during the day she paints. She does trim work in construction, and then at night is able to write if she has the energy to. I like to envision Louise during the day as writing poetry on the trim and then over it, so that these homes then, you know, people walk into that space with your words welcoming them, even if they can't read them.
Oh, I should do that. I never thought about it. What a surprise.
All right. I would love if there are other people who have questions or just reflections. If you have anything to say to Louise or any of the other artists that we heard from today, you know, I'm in constant contact with many of the writers and would love to share your reflections back with them. So please chime in. Katie, do you have any questions?
I'll speak at once. No.
We love this.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
Nancy too.
Yes.
Thanks, Nancy.
Come on, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Both of you were
all.
great.
This was great.
Thank you, Sandy.
You know how I feel. It's
We love you,
all
Michelle.
love. And you bring such life and love to people who otherwise just could not even receive all the voices and the love from the outside.
We love you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Boomerang.
So could I ask too, Katie, or maybe that would be Katie, what I have not been able yet, I still have one more day to make it to the show, right?
Yes, great question. You actually have more than one day. The exhibit is up at MacRostie Art Center through this Saturday, October 31st. And then we will be moving it to the Rife Gallery. I think it will be there November 9th through 20th. Yes, you'll still have a chance to check it out in person at the MAC. We've got a few of the videos queued up as well, but we did post a link to the We Are All Criminals site and the Scene Project there. That's another place, if you aren't going to make it into the MAC, you can definitely check that out. They've got even more poetry. I think some of the videos are up there now. Is that right, Emily?
They are indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a great way to find out some more about it too. But yeah, also please stop by the MAC. I'd love to see you.
Could you say that again? Stop by where?
Oh, MacRostie Art Center is where the exhibit is on display, and it's in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. So for those who are in the area and want a chance to see it, it would be great. Yes.
Michelle loves camping. Although you guys have snow now, right? I live in North Carolina for the next, 6 weeks, I think I'm here. And then I move back to the cities. So for now,
yes.
Yeah,
well, only the intrepid campers are out probably now. It's a little.
Yeah, I might have to drive up there and take a hike.
Yes.
You should. It's
There are some nice hikes.
Oh God, it's beautiful up there. Yeah. All right, I'm turning the mic back over to you, Katie.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to see if Emily or Louise or if anyone else on the call had any other resources that they wanted to share with folks, maybe that wanted to might be interested in learning more about some of the criminal justice reform efforts that are happening, some different things that people could get involved with. If you have any suggestions, thanks, Emily, for the link there in the chat. Yeah.
Yes, the Tony Cater. My God, I'm butchering your name. I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Cater is on the line. She is the ED of the Felony Murder Law Reform. And Tony, do you want to say a few words about that? I've dropped the URL in the chat, but.
So the website is still in creation, but I am Tony Cater, and I have a beautiful 22-year-old serving 13 and a half years at Shakopee. Was blessed to know Louise there briefly, and my daughter was sentenced under the felony murder laws. And for those who don't know what that is, basically it's a legal doctrine that came from England that said if you are part of a felony and someone else commits a murder, everyone that's a part of that felony, no intent needed, is equally and under the law as responsible as a premeditated murder. And so Minnesota has some of the most expansive felony murder laws in the nation. And so if you have a drug deal gone wrong, you're part of a burglary, you stay in a car, the stories are overwhelming. Mo, the beautiful picture of Mo, I already sent you a message asking for that photo for our website. We are in the process of trying to reform these laws. So every other common law nation in the world has abolished these laws. It came from England. It has been abolished in England since the 1950s. There are 4 states in our country, in our nation, that have abolished it. There are a ton that have reformed it that say if you are not the murderer, if you didn't aid or abet the murder, you cannot be charged with a murder. You can't be charged with a crime you didn't commit. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, ours is so expansive that not only can you be charged with the crime someone else committed, right? And in Minnesota, we don't have the death penalty. We do. It's just called life without parole, right? Maureen, that you saw the picture of, she was sentenced to life without parole. She was in a car. The actual person who committed the murder will be out in 26 years, and Maureen will die at Shakopee unless we change these laws, and we will change these laws. And California reformed theirs in 2018, and they'd made it retroactive. They said if it was wrong today, going forward, it's wrong going backwards. And they have started to release the people, and they are resentencing under the crimes they did commit. And so about 1.5 years ago, my daughter's co-defendant, parents, and myself and my husband got together I did not pay attention in civics class, and I had no idea how you make a law. And so this has been a whirlwind. It is not my day job, but it has become my passion. And so FMLR.org was birthed from that. We call ourselves #FMLR, which stands for Felony Murder Law Reform. And so the website is within 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks, we will be fully functioning. We're still creating. This year, we had a bill go into the House and the Senate, our first year in, which was a task force bill to say, let's study the laws as written and how do we reform them, and how do we resentence to make this a just system. We were bipartisan and we made it all the way through the House. We passed an omnibus bill. We got nowhere in the Senate. And so, number one, let me ask you to vote for people who believe in criminal justice reform, because our system is really broken and we can't have people in the House and the Senate that don't believe in a system of justice. The website, again, in a few weeks, we do have a petition on there to sign that says you believe in what we're trying to do, which is we're trying to change the laws that say you can't be charged with first-degree murder or any murder if you didn't murder someone, and if you didn't aid and abet that murder, right? If you weren't there with the intention, if you were there to buy some, heroin from somebody, and the drug dealer pulls out a gun and shoots your best friend, why are you charged with murder? And that's the reality. There are a lot of young people. This is majority of the people. We have the statistics now for the state of Minnesota. There are 473 people serving, which is 6% of the total population of the Minnesota DOC is felony murder convictions. Over 50% of them are under the age of 24 when they're sentenced at the time of the crime. Many of them are 16 and 17 years old, and many of them were sentenced to life without parole. And so this is my passion. And Louise and I met. Louise is a survivor of the felony murder law, is how I like to say it. And she is, as you have seen, an amazing soul. Like every other felony murder person I have met and spoken to on the phone, received letters from, there is a common denominator of world changers and people who were in the wrong place in the wrong time, got caught up in the wrong thing, and then were charged with murder. And I can't imagine what that's like. So, so your support, sign our petition, call your senator in a week and a half from now when we know who those are, and your legislators, and tell them to support us this year as we're going to bring a bill forward to, our prayer is to bring a bill forward that we change the law and we offer resentencing for everyone who's currently serving under this law. So thank you for the time to speak too.
Of course. Thank you, Tony, for your leadership, for your vision, and for your tenacity. I do believe that it will happen.
It will.
We have one more that I wanted to share. It's called Until We Are All Free. Another link in the chat. This is an organization run by Kevin Reese, a gentleman who came home from, I think, 15 years in prison. I don't know if anybody remembers.
15, and he's another felony murder law?
Yeah. And Kevin's doing amazing things. If you follow through on that link, you'll see that you can sponsor welcome home kits. Kevin is someone who has been ensuring that people who are coming home from prison have a place to stay, have a welcome bag to greet them, as a way of creating the community on the outside, a way to soften that hard landing coming home, especially during these COVID times. So yeah, just a few of the things that you can. Oh, do you have an Until We Are All Free? What is this closet that you've got, Louise? You have all the shirts that I want.
Emily had asked me a question when we were preparing for this, like what organizations, had really supported me. And I didn't know how to give justice to them all. I didn't want to just wear one t-shirt and then, so I kind of brought them all with me, just so that we could all see them. This is Kevin's shirt. This just has to be said right now. And of course, if you know me, I always talk about the murdered and missing Indigenous women. And then again, Miss Tony, there's your shirt. And MPW doesn't have t-shirts. but I did bring their books. And then lastly, I'm just gonna say,
Controversial on us.
And people are jumping off.
they go, oh, they're not gonna buy my book now.
No, just buy it and burn it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Thanks, Louise. That was great. It's almost like being at an in-person talk. We've got the show and tell and like all the swag in the back. So that was great. Well, yeah. Emily and Louise, thank you both so much for being here this evening. It was wonderful. And Emily, thanks for sharing from some of the other writers. It's really great to hear their words, see their faces, and really just reflect on where so many folks that are incarcerated today, and just what we can do to make some changes, and just especially thinking about them. I really appreciate you talking about COVID and the impacts that that's having, because I think it's just so significant, just the compounding effects that people are facing. So thank you very much for talking about that, and thanks to everyone for joining us. Thanks again to Grand Rapids Human Rights Commission, Kootasca Community Action, SCG Nonprofits for sponsoring all of this. And be sure to check out Louise's book. I'll pop the link in the chat again, and you can stop by MacRostie Art Center to see the exhibition. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.